Hello again, everyone, and welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to have a conversation with a really awesome person, Benny Vasquez from Progress Software. She's the head of developer relations there, and she's also on the board for AlmaLinux OS. In fact, she's recently taken over as the chair of the board for AlmaLinux, and we had a really awesome conversation, and of course I recorded it. Why else would I be doing this video? So what I'm going to do is play that back for you guys right now. Hello and welcome back, everyone. I am here with Benny Vasquez from Progress Software, and we're going to have a conversation about quite a few things, honestly, but the nature of today's episode is going to be in regards to AlmaLinux, the board, and of course, some other things that are related to that as well. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well, doing well.
Good.
So tell the audience a little bit about yourself, your role, or anything you want everyone to know.
Sure. So my role at AlmaLinux as of I guess about a month ago, has changed from a board member to being the chair of the board. How I got there is a pretty fun story. I spent a good portion of my early career in web hosting and in desktop support. And then a couple years ago, moved to DevOps. The AlmaLinux was founded by a bunch of folks from a company called CloudLinux. And CloudLinux is a huge partner of a company called cPanel. And most of my time in cPanel most of my time in web hosting was spent at cPanel. So we get to work with each other, we get to know each other, and the majority of my work at cPanel was community outreach and community engagement. So that's how they all knew me. They knew me as the person that was focused on community. So when they started putting together a community-backed, a community-owned, a community-governed operating system, they're like, "Hey, Benny, you want to come do this thing with us?" It's like, absolutely.
Wow, it's like you had me at before you finished asking the question. Oh, that's amazing. Working with a distribution is something that I probably want to do actually more closely now that I'm, I only have one job now, but
Yeah.
This isn't about me. So one of the things I think we could probably get out of the way, though, is to talk about really briefly the history of CentOS, not like the entire history, just recently. Like, I don't want to, talk to death about it because I think it's been covered, all over the place.
Yeah.
But give me your in your words in a minute, but basically it's like the summary is that they said that they would be supporting CentOS 8 for a certain amount of time, and then they came up and said, "Oh yeah, we're not doing that anymore."
Mm-hmm.
And CentOS does still exist, but it's just not in the same form, and that probably caused a lot of people some anxiety, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, so CentOS, what they announced in, I think it was September of last year, was that they were adding a new thing called CentOS Stream. And CentOS Stream moves from being a downstream, CentOS from being a downstream version of Red Hat to being before Red Hat. So the implication there is you get more input into what ends up in RHEL, you get more input into how the features are built and why the features are built and that kind of stuff. And what happened in December was that they announced that they had so much adoption and so much positive feedback for CentOS Stream that they dropped CentOS Linux. They the wiki at one point had said that they were going to support CentOS 8 through 2029, for 10 years. And they took that back and said, no, we're just going to support it for 2 years. And there was a whole bunch of conversation about why the wiki said something different than what they announced. But it ultimately, they announced that they were going to drop support for CentOS 8 at the end of 2021. So It was that was a year for people who had moved to CentOS 8 and planned to be able to use it for 10 years. This was a huge problem.
Yeah, it was. And, it seems somewhat more rare to me that it's like, sometimes they'll say, yeah, we're going to sunset this product, so the next one that comes out will have a shorter cycle. the current one was shrunk. We've seen like Canonical extend Ubuntu, and then companies take over Debian support, extending that. But here something's being shrunk down. So I kind of was thinking at the time, like, there's a lot of all hands meetings in IT management happening as this announcement goes around. I wonder if there was a way to know, as like the Guinness Book of World Records for the number of IT meetings in the world in one day because of the news. It definitely stressed out a lot of people.
Yeah, it did. It caused a bunch of people to have to shift. There was when the news came out, I was reading through some of the forum posts and some of the comments, and I based my entire business around this 10-year-long support. Like, my entire platform is built on the idea that we're going to be able to use CentOS 8, and now I can't.
That's a big surprise, and it's not what they expected. So let's talk about AlmaLinux and where that kind of fits in, and we could probably start with what it even is in the first place, and then how it fits in.
Sure. So it is a one-to-one binary clone of RHEL. So it replaces the CentOS Linux that everybody has been using forever. It is the goal. So CentOS Linux definitely was being used by a number of businesses, which is why we're talking about the fact that CentOS 8 being end of life early was such a huge deal for so many people. And that vacuum that was left needed to be filled. And Igor, who is the CEO of Cloud Linux, already had infrastructure to build a RHEL clone, which is what, that's a very basic definition of what Cloud Linux is. And so he and all the people that he tagged from his team who stepped in to help felt very strongly that vacuum needed to be filled, and that they wanted to build something that couldn't be sold, that was community owned, community backed, and was going to be around for the long haul.
That's really important, and I need to underscore that, community owned, because it's like everyone's probably asking, okay, is this going to happen to you? Are you going to be the next one that's going to make this big change? And then from what I gleaned from that, it's like making it from the outset impossible for that situation to happen, because it's like, it's not ours. We can't do that. We don't want to do that. But if we did want to do that, we can't do that because the community owns it. And now that the community owns it, well, the community owns it, and they don't have to worry about something like that happening, which I think is one of the major benefits. And I've used it. I did a preview video for it, and I was actually amazed that it worked on my laptop, of all things, which is not the thing that most people are going to install it on. But it was working, and that was like when it was a beta. It was very far along at the time, and I'm like, wow, this is really stable.
Yeah, because it's not hard to make a RHEL clone, right? Like, it takes infrastructure, it takes time, it takes people who know what they're doing. But the reason that CentOS was so successful for so long was that once you set everything up to do what you need it to do, it's an incredibly solid operating system.
Let's talk a little bit about the importance of AlmaLinux now, and how it fits in with these other Linux distributions, or like the RHEL ecosystem as a whole.
Yeah, sure. So a news as disrupting as what Red Hat dropped last year definitely creates a bit of a splinter. And we've seen a few operating systems come out of it, right? A few new distros come out of it. AlmaLinux is one. The big three new leaders in the RHEL ecosystem space that kind of replace CentOS are us, Rocky Linux, and Oracle Linux. And it's been really interesting from my perspective to watch how each of us are filling a different need. Greg is one of was one of the founders of CentOS, and so he's walking into it with that historical knowledge and that the historical understanding, and building a system that will work for a number of people. And we're walking in and building it in our ideal situation, because we're walking into it. Like, obviously we have history in operating systems, but we're not specifically married to what CentOS did before or trying to counter it. We're just trying to build the best thing that we can. and I'm excited for
That's
that.
amazing. Yeah, I can tell. And it's such an exciting time because it's something that I don't get to see. It's a situation I don't want to see often because I don't want there to be a situation. But what happens is that the community steps up and there's this problem. We need to work together to solve this problem and make it better.
Yeah.
In politics goes out the window, all these other things go out the window. It's just, a bunch of really awesome people just making an awesome solution in response to not so awesome news.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's one of the things that we really focused on that kind of differentiates us from where the CentOS folks ended up. Mm-hmm. Everything that we're building is community driven and community requested and community backed. Like we've got a bunch of images, and different builds to solve different problems. We've got a Raspberry Pi, an incredibly solid Raspberry Pi ARM infrastructure build. We've got a bunch of images. We've got a bunch of other stuff going on that our tech team is hard at work on. We're even working on UBI compatible Docker images that and PowerPC support and like all of this stuff that CentOS just never delivered because it wasn't as important to the people who were running it at the time.
Wow. So what am I going to hear next? It runs on a Nintendo 64?
I mean, we can make it happen.
Yeah, that'd be fun. I mean, Raspberry Pi is awesome. The audience here alone, but there's a big following there. So that I didn't actually know that. I don't know how that slipped underneath my radar. That's really, really awesome that it's available. So one thing we want to kind of touch on here is the governance model around it. So what does that actually mean that is community owned, and how does this actually work?
So the board that we've got right now, obviously was set up by Igor and the folks that were starting it, right? The goal in the long term is to have the board elected by people who are members of the foundation. You become a member of the foundation by contributing in some way, by hosting a mirror, or we also have corporate sponsorship because the reality is that we need some money, right? There's infrastructure that needs to be paid for. So we've got actually we just launched membership last week, or opened up membership last week, and we've got already almost 100 people that have applied. And those people will have the ability to decide who leads the foundation. They'll get to decide the direction based on who's leading. They get to have voices and everything that's going on. It will be I hate to say completely democratized, because there's always the idea that once you get too many people involved, it's hard to keep things moving. But it absolutely is going to be something that's driven by the people that care about it the most.
That's awesome. I think that's amazing. I think that helps build trust, and I think that's exactly what we need right now. We need trust. We need to know that we're not going to have a surprise change. I mean, obviously, IBM, Red Hat, CentOS, they can do whatever they want. They own the trademarks, but they can go that direction. We can go this direction. So that's why it's such a fair thing that if we don't like the direction, we can, make something that caters to the people that prefer the old way or even a newer way. So that's really awesome. So there was a change in leadership recently. So perhaps you want to spend some time to let the viewers know, or listeners, depending on what exactly is going on there.
Yeah. So when he started this, Igor, as he announced AlmaLinux, he said, "My goal was never to make a single company have too much control." And as was kind of the nature of how it got started, Cloud Linux ended up with a bunch of people on the board because that was who Igor tapped immediately to help. Like said, "Do you want to come help with this?" And they said yes. So we ended up with a very heavy Cloud Linux board, and he had made very clear, "I don't want this to be a Cloud Linux owned thing. I don't want to be in charge of the future of AlmaLinux. I want to set it up so that the community can own it." And so as we got closer to the membership opening up, he made good on that. He told the board, I'm going to be stepping down, and we need to talk about who's going to take over. And the board picked me.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah. So I'm the new chair, and I get to be the person that people come to when they have questions. I get to be the person that makes sure that the board functions on a regular basis, and I get to be the one that makes sure that we, as a board, are held to the responsibilities and the ideals of what the AlmaLinux Foundation, the AlmaLinux OS Foundation, wanted to be. I'm excited.
Yeah, I bet that's so amazing. That is so cool. So cool. So so one thing to kind of mention here, so obviously the directions voted on. So what are some of the things that could happen hypothetically? Because when I think of Alma Linux, I think of like you mentioned, a one-to-one, in place replacement.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, if someone says that they want the Starship Enterprise to be the wallpaper, right? And that's not exactly coming from the source, so to speak. Like, I'm sure there's going to be some. Maybe is it possible that it could go a different direction, or is it always going to be pretty much on that straight road of being the one-to-one replacement?
I can't fathom that we would ever end up in a situation where suddenly there is not a situation wherein I would allow us to become anything but what we are, right? The goal, the thing that we're filling, the hole that we're filling is the one-to-one downstream from Red Hat RHEL clone. That's what we want to be. And if we shift away from that, then we're not the right solution for those people anymore. And that would completely abandon the community that's built it so far. It doesn't make any sense to make that shift at all.
That's good. That's good. That's awesome. So what are some of the things then, if it's a one-to-one relationship, that might be voted on, like that would be brought to the board for a vote?
I think mostly it's going to end up being governance. It's going to end up being how we decide. I mean, there's going to be a lot of conversation around what we do with the committees and the SIGs and how we go about that kind of stuff. Most of what we've had to decide thus far has been around governance. It's been making sure that the board is set up, or that the foundation is set up to continue on the ideal path.
Gotcha. And it's probably still somewhat early days, though, because it's not like it's been around for a decade, right?
No. We started... Well, AlmaLinux started, the foundation started in January, and our first stable release was in March. So we've, we're months in at this point.
And it's very good work for just being months in. I mean, I've seen some distributions that have been out for years that haven't had that level of quality. So good job on that. You mentioned earlier, like Oracle and Rocky is being part of, as well as you, being part of a 3 distro kind of thing here, that people might go this direction, that direction, almost like a fork in the road. How do you think Alma Linux compares to like Rocky Linux and Oracle, for example?
Sure. So the biggest difference is the governance, right? It's how we're built, how we're going forward. We're also lost my train of thought. What was I going to say?
Happens to me all the time.
Right. I mean, either way, the biggest difference between all of them that you'll see, no matter who you're talking to, is governance, and is how we're being powered. The community behind AlmaLinux is amazing, and it's so exciting to watch the breadth of it. What's amazing to me, one of the people, I was talking to Igor yesterday, I think, and he mentioned that we're seeing a huge uptick in folks in Japan that are interested in AlmaLinux, and that is not a place that CentOS ever really saw adoption. So it's going to be interesting to see how that goes.
Yeah, that's amazing. They have a new market, even where it's like a one-to-one replacement. It's not like you need to get all the countries using it, although, of course, anyone can download it. But when someone in a new country does that for the first time, it's like, welcome aboard. Great to have you.
Exactly.
Awesome. So that's really amazing. I think AlmaLinux is a great distribution and I love the model and everything. I feel like this is what we need. It's like something almost like a phoenix, like something good coming out from a situation. I don't want to say bad. It was bad for a lot of people, but CentOS is their product. They can do whatever they want to do, but it's gonna. I'm a big fan of say what you do and do what you say. If you say you're going to give someone support, definitely give them the support.
Yeah, it was definitely a disruption. For no matter if you say it's good or bad, it was definitely a disruption.
So I would ask you what a typical day of work is for you in this position, but I think it's pretty much just started, right? I don't even know if you have a status quo yet, or if you
No,
have any understandings, expectations, or anything like that. But how's it been so far?
so far it's been great. The team that I work with most closely is Jack, our community manager, and obviously Igor and Eugene. I talk to Simon a lot about just to make sure that we're not falling into any of the missteps that he has seen. Because Simon, he's been around the open source world for a while, and in like many different aspects of it. He was part of the Open Document Foundation, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
and he was able to watch a bunch of the open source community kind of bloom and watch, okay, like these are things that we shouldn't do, these are the things that we should do, like that this one we can make this choice, but if we do that we're going to end up in this spot, or we might end up in this spot. He's really helped us make sure that we don't make those sorts of mistakes. And it's been a lot of conversations and a lot of learning and a lot of a lot of conversations. I'm excited to have more conversations with community members too. I think that for me is going to be the most exciting part.
Yeah, that is. I could tell you, even this audience, the different countries that watch this channel is just so amazing to get the message out about anything to where people all over the world are listening. And AlmaLinux being inclusive and just being like this, it's almost like a pat on the back. It's going to be okay. After finding out that we have to change our servers over to something else if we don't want to go the stream route, I think it's just amazing to have that, possibility to be able to do that.
We're happy to be here.
So when it comes to the distribution itself, I don't know. I know you've been working on it for a while, even before taking over this position. What has it been like? Because I sometimes just, I'm always in front of the camera, so I don't spend as much time with developers working on things or talking to developers or actually being a part of the dialogue and the narrative that goes on behind the scenes to create something like this. Earlier you kind of mentioned that it's fairly straightforward to fork a distribution, but it's kind of not at the same time, because there's a lot that you have to. I mean, it's no small feat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's I mean, I feel like the only word I'm saying today is community, but the best part has been watching all of the incredibly smart people come together, have really difficult conversations in a really respectful way that has meant that we have, an incredibly strong OS that is built in an environment that isn't, frankly, Linux has a very, we'll say, strong reputation, and it's not always a good one, right? I think it's important that when we go forward from here, one of the things that we get to really lean into is the thing that we get to intentionally do is make sure that we're not being we're not allowing that kind of toxicity in the AlmaLinux community at all. We have that right. We have the opportunity to not do that. We can make the right choice here. I think that's another one of the things that's going to differentiate us from historical operating systems and historical Linux stuff. We don't want to do that. The people in the AlmaLinux community are incredibly helpful, and I mean, we're all opinionated, but we're not mean.
Yeah, I think that's so amazing, because sometimes I'm afraid that the divisiveness of the Linux community, because someday just get to the Star Wars level, when you see people discussing Star Wars movies, and here I am starting a conversation in the comments below about Star Wars now.
Yep.
But Linux people, we're kind of like that sometimes because we're passionate about this thing and where it goes, and sometimes that passion is just like goes a little too far. We can kind of hopefully no one in our communities ever do that. I'm glad you are taking that on as a key point here. It's very important to be inclusive because I've seen stories in the past where someone doesn't want to contribute just because like they don't feel like it's going to be a good experience for them, or it might give them more anxiety or something like that. So it's already probably anxiety inducing enough to learn how to contribute to any operating system to begin with, let alone actually doing it.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that actually drew me to Chef when I moved to Chef before we were acquired by Progress last year. It's open source has so many volunteers, and it is entirely based on people doing work and putting in effort outside their normal job. Most of these people are not going to get paid for what they're doing. And it is so important that you welcome that and you respect that and you say, I see that this is not a thing that you're getting money for, which is the thing that drives most people in terms of what kind of work you do and what you're coming in with a love for the thing that you're contributing to. And you have to respect that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So if anyone's listening, they want to get involved, what would be the best place to point them to where they can get started?
Yeah, so AlmaLinux.org is the website. You can come hang out with us in our Mattermost chat, or obviously everything that you need, everything you could possibly want to put your hands on is on GitHub. We've got a wiki that gets you through getting started in terms of contributing and like all of the bits and pieces that you might want to need. We've got a couple of special interest groups that if you're interested in cloud or in like delivery and that kind of stuff, we've got special interest groups that you can come join and be involved there. It's an exploding community, and there's so much to do.
That's amazing. So one of the last questions I have for you then, I don't even know if there can be much of an answer to this, because normally I like to ask like, okay, what's next for Alma Linux? But then I'm thinking the answer might be some variation of, well, it's upstream, comes out, and, we come out, and I don't mean to simplify it because it's not simple to do any of this. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily like Ubuntu where they're debating over a UI theme or something. That doesn't really happen as often in a distribution like this. But keeping that in mind, in general, are there any, details you want to spill about next stuff that?
Yeah. So we should have the 8.5 beta out in the next day, at the very least in the next 4 days. At the very latest, it'll be out by the end of this week. So that'll be fun. We've got a couple of projects in the works around helping people upgrade from CentOS 7 to AlmaLinux 8 without having to migrate. Like that would be a huge thing.
Wow.
We've got like I was talking about before, we've got the additional platforms that we want to support and that kind of stuff. It's really just expanding the reach of AlmaLinux, making it more accessible to people the people that need it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, and that beta would be a great way for people to get started, because that's the reason why we have betas. You could test it. You could install it on something, obviously not production, but if you have a spare computer, server, or virtual machine, just create a virtual machine and then set it up and see if you could break it. If you succeed, then let someone know about that, how you did that. Then maybe that could save someone else some trouble later.
Yeah, I'm always worried that when I say contribution, people here can like send code in. It doesn't have to be code. Your contribution could be opening bug reports. Your contribution could be answering questions in our chat. Your contribution could be asking for a specific platform that you need. Like it is entirely about contributing wherever you can, however you can.
That's so great that you mentioned that, because one of my first contributions to open source was literally a pull request to fix a typo in a comment. So it probably took me longer to read the documentation on how to do a pull request than to actually do the things. I just pull it down, I fix it, and I found another typo in another file, and it took me. It was very quick to do. So that's a good way to get started. You could just submit that documentation. Some I don't know if you guys do, but some companies have the documentation in Git as well, so you could practice pull requests. At the same time, and you don't even have to know any programming language to be able to do that. If you're a writer, then there you go.
Exactly. However you want to contribute, we will welcome you.
That's so amazing. All right. Is there anything else you would like the audience to know? Pretty open-ended at this point. The stage is yours, no pressure.
We're going to be at All Things Open next week, and you should definitely come say hi.
Yeah, absolutely.
We will have some swag, not tons, I don't think, because honestly, I don't know. Do we really need more T-shirts? I think we do.
Yeah, T-shirts for me. I know I'm wearing a Zelda T-shirt today, but normally I try to wear a Linux-related something, so it always helps me. But then again, not everyone is like me. So yeah, swag is good. Yeah. Keychains, T-shirts, whatever you guys make, I'm sure will be appreciated.
Yep. So stop by the booth, and if you're not able to come in person, there is a virtual booth too, and there's a virtual portion of All Things Open this year, so don't miss it. It's a good conference.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the channel and talking with me today. It was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So there you go. I had a lot of fun speaking with Benny. And I found out later that she's actually a fellow Michigander as well. Small world. It was definitely an awesome conversation, and I hope to have her back on the channel as soon as I possibly can. But definitely make sure you check out AlmaLinux. It's a great distribution. I really love it. And if you are looking for a replacement for CentOS, it's definitely worth a consideration. And as always, join the community if you can, because anyone that can join the community for a project, they are really helping out. And AlmaLinux could definitely use some help because they are a community-driven project, and every little bit will go very far in helping them out. Anyway, with all of that said, thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next video.